The base commander came and the officers attended and officially welcomed us back from a mission. If a captain had Halsschmerzen, that meant that he had a sore throat, and he was going to decorate his throat with a Knight's Cross. And of course, in the process of doing so, he might take some more chances that the crew wasn't always all that enthusiastic about. And the band always played a certain song, and we liked it very much. We were singing, "Now we dive into the foaming beer, because 518 got its ass on the pier." Later on, much later on, when I came to the United States, I found out that that song was Stars and Stripes Forever. Well, of course, we got ashore, the drinks and the beer in particular, it tasted very good because there was no drinking on the submarine. And of course, there were the pleasures of the flesh. They loaded us into a bus and took us to the next town and let us out near the bordellos that were there, and we frequented the prostitutes and make up for lost time. Didn't take us long to catch up, however. We had our own special train that ran from the western coast of France all the way back to Germany, to Hamburg, and it was a very comfortable train. That was one of those little privileges that we had.
The relationship between Admiral Dönitz and his men in the U-Waffe, or the submarine service, can perhaps best be described as personal. He identified his submarines as his submarines and his men as his men. He made a point of personal contact with his commanding officers. He knew the crews. He epitomized for them what it meant to be a submariner and a member of a very special elite crew.
Kaplan Hofmeister, seiner Mutter das U-Boots-Kriegsabzeichen zu überreichen. Kämpfen heißt opfern und siegen. Der Kampf geht weiter.
The basis of Dönitz's philosophy was an idea which had started very late in World War I. The idea was to use not single submarines, but submarines in groups. Submarine command normally had no aircraft for reconnaissance. The submarines had to reconnoiter themselves.
The U-boats were positioned in the Atlantic in so-called reconnaissance lines. But there were several U-boats stationed at various points within a particular area where they could keep a watchful eye on the traffic flow, and when a U-boat sighted a convoy, it then sent a radio signal giving the precise coordinates of the convoy, how many knots it was doing and how many ships there were. Then all the other U-boats would mount a combined attack on the convoy, and we call that the Wolf Pack strategy. U-boats never operated alone, rather 5, 6 or 7 boats, if available, would pounce on the convoy simultaneously.
It was first called group tactics. About the end of the year 1939, I got into a train and entered the restaurant car. I saw Dönitz with some other officers sitting there for dinner. Dönitz said the submarine force really needed a slogan. And then he took his table napkin and put down some words. U-Boote sind die Wölfe zur See, angreifen, reißen, versenken. U-boats are the wolves at sea, attack, tear, sink.
A submarine is a killing machine, and it's a weapon. And the people serving on a submarine are eager for success. You spot the ship, you spot the convoy, and you fire the torpedo, and you look at the stopwatch and say, well, by now it should have hit the torpedo. Suddenly it gives a big bang and say, well, it's a hit. And you are proud of success, and you don't think of the poor people. You don't think so. You don't see the subject you are shooting at. Perhaps the captain does to the periscope, or the people on the bridge if you're fighting above the surface. It's impersonal. It's a fighting machine, and you are part of the machine, a little wheel. And you don't think of these consequences. It might be bad, but that's the way it is.
The merchant seamen who sailed out from Liverpool and other British ports were the unsung heroes of the Battle of the Atlantic. Drawn from all nationalities, they put their lives on the line to transport the vital supplies from North America. 30,000 paid the ultimate price.
Well, to be torpedoed is a very horrifying experience. Now, depending on what type of merchant ship you're on, if you're loaded with explosives and you're hit with a torpedo, there's one big explosion. The ship disintegrates, and there's usually no survivors. If you're on a tanker, particularly loaded with aviation gas or high-octane gas, there's a big ball of flame after being struck with a torpedo, just conflagration. And again, there's very, very few survivors.
I always slept with my clothes on. I always had my boots where I could grab them. I always had my life jacket. Most of the time slept with it, even washed with it. When I used to do the dishes, I used to take them out on the deck and lay them on the water, pans of water on the hatch, top of the hatch, and wash them there. And they used to say, why are you doing that? And I used to say, well, if we get hit, I want to be outside where I won't get jammed.
We were in the part of the ship which is almost impossible to escape from under conditions of being torpedoed. The engine room, of course, being the focal point of any torpedo attack, being the most vulnerable part of a ship in order to disable it. We felt very keenly our exposure down there. Really, we felt that if we were ever torpedoed on watch, we really didn't have a chance to escape.
I've seen many, many ships sunk. In fact, we're so close to some of them, sometimes you'd feel the heat from them. And these men were in the water, and oily water, and crude oil, and black bunker, and we were not allowed to stop to pick up survivors. That was a very strict rule the Navy made, that you were not to stop under any circumstances. So it's pretty bad when you know there's people in the water there hollering for help, and there's not a blessed thing you can do about it.
There's one ship designated to pick up survivors, and if that ship found you before you died, exposed from exposure, you were probably saved. If not, you're just another casualty in the North Atlantic.
In the heart of London, at Churchill's secret underground headquarters, the crippling loss of ships, supplies, and lives was painfully apparent. There was a desperate need for additional escort ships to help protect the convoys. One of Churchill's first acts as Prime Minister was to ask Roosevelt for assistance. A deal was finally struck. In return for leases on 8 Caribbean islands, Britain got 50 Great War American destroyers. An unequal exchange, many said. The ships were in poor shape. But for the first time, it meant an open, official U.S. commitment to Britain's cause. 6 months later, Roosevelt came to the rescue in decisive manner when Britain no longer had the cash to pay for its American supplies.
Roosevelt had to come up with a different means of helping his ally, Winston Churchill, and it was the Lend-Lease Bill. Now, this was an act whereby the United States agreed to give Britain all it needed in raw materials, weapons, fuel, and food in order to keep that island nation alive. And the Lend-Lease Bill was made palatable to many by the wonderful image that was created by President Franklin Roosevelt when he said, "It is like a man whose neighbor's house is on fire and he lends him his garden hose."
The Lend-Lease Bill meant Britain could draw on American war supplies without having to pay cash. Above all, it guaranteed a supply of cargo vessels to challenge Dönitz's declared goal of sinking Allied merchant ships more rapidly than they could be replaced. In the spring of 1941, the U-boat arm suffered one of its first major setbacks. Two of Dönitz's greatest aces, Schepke and Prien, set out for the last time. Their boats were sunk in the Atlantic and neither commander survived. On the same patrol, Otto Kretschmer's boat was mortally damaged by the British destroyer HMS Walker and its crew forced into the water. Volmar König was there,